Hello, my name is Evalds Urtans, and welcome to the new podcast AI Ranch, where we cover the wild west of AI and how it affects the business today. And today with me is my old friend Eduard Puķins-Slava, and he is from Giraffe 360, the robotics company here in the Baltics, in the eastern part of Europe. And they have achieved quite significant results. I think they raised more than 20 million in last 10 years, and they have, I believe, one of the biggest teams, the largest teams here in Baltic, specifically in AI. And Edwards himself is, I would say, quite distinguished kind of AI researcher and have been working with lots of things in the company. Welcome, Edwards, today.
Hey, Evalds. I'm Edward. I'm an ML developer in Giraffe 360.
Please tell us more about Giraffe 360 and exactly what you do for those people who have never heard of it.
Okay, so basically what the user would experience is sort of a virtual tour for your real estate property. So think of as Google Maps for your property. Our clients are usually real estate agents, and for them we offer a service where they can capture these virtual tours. And we actually are fairly deep in the level. So basically we produce our own cameras and develop all of our own software. So some people will refer to our company as PropTech company.
So what pain do you solve actually for your customers? I have heard in the UK that they don't have the floor plans in the apartment, real estate business, right? Or am I wrong?
So there are many nuances between countries. So our main customer is UK historically, and it's also our biggest by volume, and they have like different floors and different ground floors. But the pain we solve actually is that convenience. So all they need is a camera. They don't need another photographer. They don't need to do any sort of like communication with the photographer. They just come with their camera, or basically our Giraffe 360 camera. They capture real estate according to a specification we provide them, and few hours or day later they receive virtual tour, and it might be plugged straight into their dashboard or whatever system they use. And we actually became quite successful due to COVID. Because before that it was more difficult to convince clients they need these virtual tours, but due to COVID, like people distancing themselves, so like bringing a photographer and your real estate agent and maybe together was more difficult. But if you don't need a photographer, you just real estate agent basically by themselves comes in, does everything. Like it solves a lot of the problems of like distancing and stuff like that.
So you're telling that the product actually solves the pain for the creating convincing listing for the property, right?
Yeah, it's also so basically it helps create this immersion, especially if you can't go to that property. For example, you're viewing the property in London from Barcelona or vice versa. So you can actually experience how it would lay out. And for a real estate agent, it's also like very cost efficient and very easy to capture these properties.
But so I have seen, at least in public domain, that you have the very detailed maps of the, like the floor plans of these properties. So is that a significant part of the business, or why do you need them at all?
So this is one of the requirements clients usually bring up to what they want. So they want to see where, for example, where the furniture is, where the sinks are, where doors are, where windows are, and we have to. So basically, our R&D team creates these virtual floor plans and all the furniture and layouts that are there, and we need to create software for that. And usually, it's machine learning, and that solves this.
And what are your competitors, and how are you better for them?
So we're not competing directly with our competitors on the same stuff. So our biggest competitor is Matterport, I would say. He's the most well-known, and their main feature is 3D dollhouse.
Dollhouse, 3D dollhouse?
Yeah, that's what they call themselves.
Okay.
So they create this 3D map, basically, where you can see it, and it's their signature. But we don't have anything like that. What we do is create image enhancements, or we do sort of, for example, we remove cameras from our images. So in your virtual tour, you won't see our own camera in reflections or stuff like that. And also we provide floor plans with our distinct style.
So you're starting mentioning already some of the AI technologies that you use in your product. So from your look at the developments, so how much of the product is value is based on the AI versus the hardware aspect versus the software engineering, or versus maybe the marketing and sales, from what you see?
Well, for our company, I would say machine learning is everything in a certain sense, because we're a service, so we don't sell our cameras, we sell the service. So clients actually don't get to buy our cameras; they only they can be only subscribers, and so they basically get they pay a certain amount of money, and they can capture a certain amount of projects each month. And without ML, it wouldn't be possible to scale the business, because a lot of floor plan creation and image tone mapping before I started working there was done manually, and so our main objective was to automate this. And without machine learning, you can't scale this business at all.
Well, you say that the cameras are your cameras, and you can only subscribe to them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and and then you mentioning the floor plan generation, right? That detects objects in the rooms, right? So what would happen if I would place giant teddy bear in the middle of the room with your system?
So hopefully it wouldn't detect that giant teddy bear as anything else than a teddy bear. But usually people are not interested in showing teddy bears in your floor plan. So
Okay.
But there are certain things that people care about. It's how those image floor plans look. For example, colors, and they definitely like to know where are the kitchen, where is the sink, maybe show where's your sink and bathtub, stuff like that.
Yeah, have you had situations where your system detects bathtub in the middle of the room somewhere?
Yeah, it has detected it. It was a true positive. So there have been very interesting cases where, for example, some clients have showers in their bedrooms.
Oh, yeah, but of course, to not disdain some potential customers, these are probably the test cases, edge cases, right? And
yeah, they're definitely edge cases, and we don't know the reasoning behind, of course, but we have to detect them. So anyway, so it's a certain challenge to not be fooled by, because because we have classifiers for each room type. So it would be easy just to okay, if it's a bedroom, and it detects a sink or something like that, just discount it, but you can't do that.
yeah, I know that in UK they have actually sinks in the bedrooms. That's a true thing. That's not something typical in other parts of the world, as far as I have seen. Okay, so and what are the key projects that you personally have been working so far in the Giraffe?
So for me, it's not the floor plan part. So I work on image enhancement. So it involves image tone mapping, fusion of different exposures, finding for certain objects like license plates and blurring them. Also finding cameras and in-painting them. So in-painting stuff.
License plate?
Yeah, for example, because due to GDPR or basically.
But you're doing the floor plans.
No, I'm not doing the plans. So we have two branches basically on our.
Sorry, I meant you're doing the real estate property objects, right? And how comes that you have the license plate?
Oh, so because outdoor images, because people usually capture also outdoor images on the street, and of course there are a lot of cars there. So we have to, and clients are required usually in listings to blur them, right? And we provide a convenience so that we automatically detect, basically like Google Maps does, you don't see license plates.
So from what you're telling right now, it seems that you have your own in-house team, and as far as I know, it's quite capable. So what would you say from your experience if there would be a company that do not have such many features of AI in their product and they would like to add these things? So would you recommend of building teams like yours or outsource them? And what are some like pros and cons for that?
I would definitely, it depends, definitely. Creating a team is not an easy process, so especially because we didn't have like very senior ML developers at the beginning, so we didn't have any guidance. So I would definitely encourage people to create their own teams if it's really core to their company. For example, for our business, it was core that we have this ML team. We didn't outsource it, and we couldn't like find solutions that just solved our problem, so we had to do it. But for other teams where it would be a feature, maybe they don't know whether it would be like bringing revenue in. They might start with just experimenting and maybe just outsourcing it for the first time, because there's a lot of also not just creating your team, it's just also creating infrastructure that might be a problem.
Okay. And in terms of your team, like what is the structure of your team? What is the daily life and the challenges to have when you build your in-house AI team?
So from the early beginning, we didn't have roles. Rather, we had like responsibilities for each developer. So we started as 2 ML developers, and he had the floor plan part, I had the image part, and now our team has grown, but we have similar structure where we have each person has a dedicated project they're working on. The more senior you are, the more like standalone you are. Basically, you're working by yourself, and you communicate directly with respected like stakeholders. For example, people who process floor plans or your R&D leader. And some juniors have like their tutor or like their manager.
But in your case, so you said you started without very knowledgeable people. So I mean, it took you like 8 years or so, right, or maybe more to acquire that knowledge, and you now feel that the people who have been all these years have reached the level that they're able to match the talent that would be enrolled level, or what do you think?
I think we have talented people. What we don't have is sort of the experience of like being at a really grand scale. So for example, companies like Google, which have many developers and also infrastructure where they like do online learning all the time. And we're not at the level where we have huge infrastructure. So I would say we have knowledge of like the ML, of the research part, of the development part, but of the infrastructure part, how to scale basically ML ops part, where that might be where we are still struggling, because it's just we're gradually getting into that level.
So it seems that you're telling that you could solve some of the things with AI, deep learning, machine learning in small scale, but as soon as you start going in large scale, it's a little bit different game, right?
Yeah.
And what is the difference? For example, if I have some small scale project and large scale, have you seen yourself some significant differences or not yet?
When you have something like small scale, for example, a classifier that runs, I don't know, on not that many projects, you have single server, it's fairly easy. But when you have maybe 20, 30 models, and they can be bombarded by many clients, and you have to build a robust infrastructure in-house, like that's total different ballgame, because in-house tools are not that mature. Like it's the MLOps field is still developing, and people are still trying to figure out what's the best approach to serving these models. So.
And you're serving them from cloud, or you're serving them locally? What's your experience? What are the pros and cons that you know?
So we have our own data center, and we basically produced our own scripts for serving, and we use, of course, some tools that helps it, but like it's not the complete pipeline from like we with CI/CD, where there's like GitLab and other products that already accomplish this. But for ML, like there's no such like easy to use tool that just
does everything you need. And okay, let's return back to the team a little bit. So how do you keep the track of these developments, research, especially? If I'm asking you to build some feature in user interface, right? It's easy to track your progress. With research, like it can be some result you're not sure if that is the best result, right? And how you track it, like is it one person working on research project, right? He works for years, and then at the end it discovers there was some kind of logical error or something like that. So how you deal with these things, how you motivate people, how you structure them, how you take accountability of them?
For our company, I think we are a bit of a unique place because we're automating processes that already manually existed. So we don't have to solve something 100% completely. Our main metric is that we improve throughput. So for example, a certain person had to manually process 100 images or something, and now we automate 50% or 90% of them, and he has to only do 10%. We have improved something, and there are main stakeholders that report whether something is broken or there's some improvement, and so we don't have to solve some problems completely, which might be different for companies because in some respects you can of course create metrics. For example, for floor plan, you have your ground truth data, and you know whether your new model is better. But for example, for other problems you don't exactly know. For example, for image enhancements, there's only
image fusion or something like that.
Yeah. So for example, when you do color toning, tone mapping for images, some people don't like it, some people like it, and you have your people who can go and review them, but you still don't know whether it's going to be exactly objective.
So is it a single researcher working on single problem, or you have some methodology to make sure that the guy is not or the girl is not stuck to some local optima and trying to make it improved, right? And it doesn't improve. What is the way how you structure the methodology of delivering the best results?
So we have basically we have single person mostly working on some project, but now we have multiple people sometimes joining in, so they can comment on that. And we have weekly meetings, so they report what they have tried, what they have done, and we see whether they get stuck or not. And it kind of helps. So we don't have a very specific methodology. Everyone who researches does it their own way. What we do is have these weekly meetings where we can see how it's progressing, and how we can help. They describe their own problem. Maybe somehow other people can join in and.
Give an example of how the weekly meeting works.
So you basically create a presentation and you show, okay, I created this model, I tried this. For example, in image enhancements, I would have a specific model or specific backbones. I would show outputs, and people would comment whether they see actually any differences. Because when you work on, for example, image enhancements, you see certain details that have changed. And there are people who don't work on it. They were like, oh, it's the same, nothing's changed, or they prefer something completely different. So you need that outside perspective because you can get bogged down.
So you say that in the AI researcher meetings, you also invite the end users to look at the results, or?
So basically, in our meetings, everyone can join in. They're publicly streamed, within the company. So even management or people who are working on image enhancements can manually, everyone can join in and ask questions if they want to.
Well, do they actually join, or?
Yeah, they do. They join. A lot of people join. Not many people ask questions besides usually other ML developers, but people do join in. Also, top management joins in.
Okay. And so in the terms of more in the business direction, so what is the cost, of the AI researcher here in the Baltics, in your estimate, from and to, what should companies calculate in their cash flow if they want to build any capability?
Well, I would say it's this very similar to other software developers. I don't see that much of a difference. What I would say, I don't know how in the future it's going to be, because there's a lot more interest in becoming ML developer. Because a few years ago, people didn't know that much about it. There was no hype about it. Now a lot of people want to be researchers or AI developers, but they don't actually know what it is. And there's not that many companies that like want, in Latvia at least, machine learning developers.
So, but then you're saying that the skill set of the AI researcher matches the skill set of, let's say, web developer?
I wouldn't say the skill sets are not the same, but some things like I think that people are actually more enthusiastic to become ML researchers, at least because it's more flexible job. So you have your own you can pursue different technologies, different research ideas. You can goof around and play with ideas. So I think it's more enjoyable in sort of sense. But you also need that drive to finish things because it's very frustrating when you research something very long and you can't get those results. So you need those are different mindsets.
It's interesting that you're not mentioning really much education.
Well, because we have this program where we have basically high school graduates. They join the program in Liepa, where they're taught like for 1 year software development and machine learning. And now we have been doing this for the 3rd year, I think. And these are the second time there's people have finished and joined us, and they can start contributing to our company like straight away, basically just 1 month in, and they can like start putting things into production.
But they still had educational path, you know.
Yeah,
so,
but it's not a 3-year university degree, right? So I think that, and even in our company, we don't have any PhDs.
You don't have any.
Not in ML part. So we have.
I know one.
But
actually, but maybe you know also. She is really excellent. I think physics PhD.
Oh yes, yeah, she is a physics PhD.
And then she moved to machine learning. But I was wondering, like I met you actually. I remember in university when you were studying PhD, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so I believe you definitely have some bad things to say about that experience, even though, you know, I myself finished, and there is also, so I wanted to ask you, maybe from the other side, can you give us like some good things? You know, why would anyone want to seriously finish the PhD and then proceed into, you know, machine learning path? Like, not aside the things that might be bad, but what would be good for that?
I would say definitely, I wouldn't discount PhDs at all. I think they're really great. The only difference is where you get that PhD. So in Riga Technical University, you were probably the most senior in machine learning, and you were yourself only like PhD student at that time. So there were no people who could teach like state-of-the-art technologies. But in other universities where there are some people who actually are doing state-of-the-art and they know machine learning really well, like it might be definitely worthwhile studying.
So you're saying that the kind of one of the most important characteristics would be if the staff, if the like professors there have the a higher experience in this field, and then they could actually give things to you for the advantage. But then at the same time, the field of research, right? So I know some commercial companies publish research. Our company also published research, but so what do you think? Like, what is the importance of trying things that others have not tried, and then try to publish it, and you know, actually go to academic path as well?
I think we have not published anything, and it's probably because like it's in our day-to-day stuff, it's not that important. And I think it's maybe important when you want to attract people or like show your research, but we have thought about open sourcing some stuff. And mostly it's due to people collaborating on your own ideas. So for example, you can work on some problem, but if you open source it, maybe other people can join in and do something with it, because we work on niche things, and in those, for example, in floor plans, you don't have like great data sets, so people can't actually do research in those topics. So that's what we see that also our competitors do. They open source their data sets, so to allow other researchers or academics join in and contribute to the models or in their niche things.
You mentioned a lot of good things. So when can we expect some open source datasets from you?
We have to talk about this internally. We just have recently started about talking about it. Of course, it's more difficult. I don't know like the legal stuff, so because it's not our own data, obviously. So.
But then another thing of this. So the open source versus your own commercial research. Like how much are you using already the open source technology in your product, and like is it actually some do you have some components which are completely your own fundamental research? Okay, you mentioned the open sourcing dataset. So what is the like in your own technology, what is the importance of open source component, and have you tried to build some of the research from scratch? Like, is it like fundamental research? Are there some of those components in your product? Maybe you can comment on that.
So what we do mostly is we try to look for already existing solutions, like most sane people should do before like delving into creating your own, because you will have there's certain stuff that we have to delve deeper into. We usually try to build upon existing parts. For example, segmentation and classification models. We tweak them. We add certain parts like for technical purposes, and sometimes because we have to. For example, we work with really large image sizes. We have panoramas that are 50 megapixels, right? And for standard ML models, like 50 megapixel images it's a really challenge. So you have to work around that. And for other parts, we have to tweak how we put into data or how we manipulate those data. And now we're reaching that stage where we can't just progress iteratively. We need to do our own research. For example, to create our own models that use the data we have. For example, what I haven't mentioned is that we have a LiDAR on our camera. It's not just a pure visual camera. We have a LiDAR for measuring distances. And most ML models don't incorporate this. So we have to figure out how to incorporate this LiDAR measurements into ML to make these outputs more robust. And sometimes it's easier. You just like try naive methods and just plug those data straight in and it works. Other times it just doesn't improve anything.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that from your experience, the existing solutions and then fine-tuning, adapting them for the business case have proven a good strategy. Have you tried also at some point building something from scratch and failed in that, or?
Yeah, of course. We have tried re-implement certain things or just like going off the beaten path and nothing's like perfectly new. Obviously, you try a research paper, look for that component, add it in, and see if it works. And mostly it doesn't, or it doesn't improve anything that much. But sometimes it works and creates better stuff. We don't publish this, so we don't know how to compare this against others. We know that like what we do is like the best for our company and from the available tools. But for example, for image enhancements or tone mapping, there's a lot of companies that do that and also don't publish their research, or like at least in a testable way. Because for example, every smartphone company, right, does their own. They have their AI editors for images, but we can't really compare against them that well. We don't know what's their input usually or what they do, because it's not also only machine learning. You can read their papers sometimes and they describe how they have like these handcrafted features and noise reduction. It's mostly not machine learning. And then they have certain parts that are machine learning.
So you're saying there's still a lot of room for expert knowledge, right?
Yeah, definitely. Even for our case, we have certain ML models and a lot of pre and post processing, and that is also a lot of algorithms or handcrafted features. and that we use to get the desired results. And the holy grail, of course, is like end-to-end machine learning model where you just have your input data and it outputs everything you need. But it doesn't work that way all the time. Sometimes you have them, but a lot of the stuff is just another piece of the pie. So you have complex pipelines.
You mentioned input data, and also before open sourcing your data to see what other researchers can come up with and what is your standing probably in your solution, right? If you compare, maybe some other research organization could do better than you can do, but the data, right? So what is your experience so far of gathering data, labeling data? Well, was it difficult? Was it costly? What should companies look forward if they decide to work on their data with these models?
Yeah, data is the thing that I think people underestimated first, especially if you haven't, if you come from research, usually take public data set that's out there and you just work on it. But for companies, usually the data the data they need are not available publicly, so you have to somehow get it. And one of them is manually labeling them. And then, for example, for floor plans, there were available data. A lot of the time, they were very small data sets, so not really applicable to our case. And they might have commercial licenses, so we can't use them. So we have to create our own. And we use for some, at the beginning, open source tools to label them. And it's also a pain to label them because there's edge cases all the time. And then ML developer has to think, okay, what do I want to do in this case? Do I want to label it, for example, you have a bathroom with sloped ceilings. And obviously, if you wanted the room contour around the sloped ceilings, it wouldn't make much sense because it wouldn't help you because you don't need to know the slope of the ceiling. And you give it to some people to label them who are not experts in machine learning, obviously, and they might like randomly bombard you during the day, and you have to answer them. It just takes your time. Like the developer can't think because they're basically interrupted, and they have to think in the middle of the day about how to label it, and they don't know it because they haven't experimented it. So these edge cases are they actually contribute a lot to the labeling time and how difficult it's going to be.
Do you have in-house labelers, right?
Yeah. So because we had this manual processing of data before, naturally there also are labelers. And
do you understand correctly? At some point, at least part of your product was done manually, right?
Yeah. At the very beginning, when I came, we didn't have ML team. I was one of the first two ML developers there.
So they were stitching images manually.
They were not stitching. They had done some, for example, groundwork where there was image stitching software. But for example, image enhancements or camera removal or tone mapping.
Or floor plans.
Those are done manually.
Now they are not done manually.
No, they're not done manually. Most of the work is automated. But of course, it's that polishing where we could like be completely hands off. We're trying to reach that stage, and that's one of the challenges.
How far you are from that? What do you think? Like 1 to 100?
So in certain things we have are very well done. So we have achieved what we didn't expect to achieve so far. But floor plans are much more tricky because they have a lot of components. So and they can like even one thing that fails sometimes. Like if you have like 30 components, that adds up quickly, right? And you have to check each time. So even the checking stage at certain scale just.
It's actually what you're telling. I think it's important for businesses that would want to use the machine learning technology. They should not imagine that it would replace the whole process immediately, right?
No. So it's best by starting to just a small single process and then see how it works, because you have to think what would happen if that model failed, like miserably, for example. Would this, and you didn't check it, like if, for example, in our image case, we have model, but before the clients see it, we have some quality check, where people see whether it failed and they can fix the problems. So it works fine for us. But for example, if we didn't have this quality assurance stage, and people sell like this rubbish out, but it might not be very good for the company, where people see this and they're complaining.
Like in the living room, the toilet seat, right, or something.
Yeah.
But but that's a good point. And then in terms of the data set, I didn't yet answer regarding like how time consuming, how costly it is. Also, it is kind of strange and interesting that you have the direct communication between labelers and the developers and machine learning researchers, right?
Yeah.
Like, why is that, and what is the costs?
Well, we haven't calculated the cumulative costs, but the cost, of course, is developer time. But there's no one better really to answer those questions than the developer itself. Because he wants, for example, for a floor plan, we get input what we want to find, right? But we have to figure out how to get those things that people want to find. And we might need more things than just for example, you want to find a door in the room. There might be other things you want to annotate and how you want to label them. For example, which direction this door goes. And it might be very difficult to tell it from the image if the door is closed, so you might need to see hinges and very small details. And we use this, and it's time consuming in some cases, for example, because you have a full panorama and there's a very many detailed nuances that people have to learn before they can completely annotate this data. But for other cards, for example, you need to find TVs and you just draw a single box. It's very easy to tell people, just whenever you see TV, just draw a box around it. So depending on the problem, it can be very time consuming, and even for a single image might take 30 minutes, even in some cases, or it might take 10 seconds.
So, okay, let's take some examples of the floor plans, right? So how many floor plans would you say would you need to build any reasonable model that would not put toilet seats in the living room very often?
So you're usually looking at a few thousand samples. It also depends how varied they are. So
only a few thousand, right?
Yeah, only a few thousand. You work with most models work well with a few thousand samples. By well, I mean they don't work in every case, but they work well enough. So you don't need a huge labeling team at the beginning. But once you want to go and polish stuff and get really accurate results, so you don't have to worry, you're probably looking at tens of thousands.
Okay, so let's say thousands to tens of thousands. That would mean let's say few labelers. And by the way, do you use just one labeler for each project, or there's multiple labelers, right?
So we have multiple labelers. And
why is that? Why just not one?
Because we have them, and also because if we want to do something quickly, one labeler might not be enough. If it takes him 10 minutes per sample, it's not that many in a week.
Also, how you then ensure the quality, right? If you have multiple labelers, at least in our experience, then you cross-examine them, right? For the quality, you could give the same sample that one did the label, right, to the other labeler, double check if they match, right? Do you do something like that?
We don't cross-check them with labelers. We have dedicated people who are more specialists in that field, and they check it. So, for example, for image quality, we have people who are more senior or their management level, and they check whether those images conform to the quality we want. And for certain floor plans, we have other people who want. We have, I think, only one person or two people who can also check whether it's what we want.
Okay, but then for let's say 10,000 images, it's kind of quite unprecise process, or there is more to that.
Oh, well, we're still figuring out how to scale this. So at the beginning we had only one person labeling each, but because we had more people, we want to scale this process. And now we have some workflows that operate this. We have like our own tools, basically, where we can find samples that need reviewing or they need fixing, and it improves this process. But going to like a large scale labeling, it's also a challenge that we're facing, and we're building our own tools for that.
But still, you're looking at probably starting at least from, let's say, 20,000 euros up till maybe even few 100,000 euros to build that kind of data set, right?
Probably, yes. I haven't calculated in costs because that's probably interesting way to think about how much your data set costs.
Yeah. But I'm just like if there is some company wanting to use this kind of technology, they should calculate in those costs that first of all, the data is not you cannot really effectively use just raw data, right? You need to do some pre-processing with it, or you believe that you can, in some cases, just take raw data. What's been your experience?
Depends on the task. For example, for images, like we need raw data because like it's what's going to be input for the model. So it's best to work with raw data, because imagine the case where you do some post-processing and it might change a lot, like depending, you figure out better pre-processing of that, and then you have to label that, all of that. You don't want that to happen, really. You want to label on the raw images or the raw data if it's possible.
Well, I was thinking this pre-processing step, including the labeling. Because like, of course, there is right now, as you know, a few domains that are evolving fast, like the image processing, like where you can work with natural language or just pure natural language, where you would take documents that have not been labeled at all, right, and do the zero-shot learning, right, and the same on the images. Now there is actually lots of research about the models that can recognize things and detect even textures on the raw images, right, without any training. So this, and by the way, this kind of direction, have you tried already to automate at least some parts of labeling? You know, you could reduce the costs of labeling, and even the same way as you said, you have the floor plans where the expert cleans it up, right? You could have the first edition of the labeled samples, and then somebody cleans it up. What do you think?
We're already basically doing that. So for floor plans, we have our predictions, and we use them as the basis usually, and then we fine tune it. Obviously, or like correct if something's missing, add them. And for new data sets where we don't have anything, we have tried just like using some baseline model, for example, and just churning through our data set and defining, for example, TVs or like some other chairs, samples with them, and just using those. Because it's also like an issue. For example, you have maybe 1 million images in your data set, and you want to find certain samples that you have not labeled, for example, with like TVs. And then you don't want to manually go through them. So you just use some existing tools to filter them.
You say filtering. I think it's also a little bit tricky, because you might filter out edge cases as well, you know?
Definitely.
But anyways, so this is one part. And you say you do everything in-house, almost everything so far, even the servers in-house. So why not like outsource the labeling part?
We looked into it. So there were these Amazon Mechanical Turks. The issue was quality. So even with our in-house dedicated laborers, we experienced that there's quite a lot of communication, and also with this communication, we better get to understand our own data set. And if you take outsource this, then you might lose this communication. Also, you might get really junk data that you can't use anyways. So you might need to relabel it anyways.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point. I think the communication part of the labelers for the data, those of you who have worked with this understand that's actually it is important. And also and you cannot get it more often with outsourced sources. So the labelers, you mentioned that the machine learning experts, researchers, cost about the same as the developers. So I would say in the Baltics region, for those who don't know, I would say it might be like 1K up till maybe even 4 or 5K salaries, right? For the depending on the seniority and the experience. And then for the data labelers, what are the costs and how do you retain them? Because that's not a job that probably everybody dreams of often, right? Or you make it that way.
I don't know about whether it's their dream jobs, but for example, most of our in-house team, I think, they're called graphic designers. So there are two parts. One of them were the ones who annotated images, so they're more specific skill sets. So for example, people who know Photoshop or other like image editors, like that's like similar. They're not photographer level, but it's also in Baltic they're growing more expensive.
Mm-hmm. But you're saying that you try to motivate them in a way that their work is not just data labeling, right?
Yeah. So for now, they basically there are two things. One of them is they correct our predictions. So for example, if we have failed predictions, they correct them before the client sees them. And then once they finish, they work as data labelers. So to improve our data set so that they don't have to work. And actually, they're our biggest customer because they're the biggest complainers. So because they don't want to like fix those production issues, they want them to be better. Like they want actually their models to be as accurate as possible. Because clients are not usually that vocal. So we don't have like direct pipeline with customers, what they want, what they need. So
it sounds like you're trying to make their work interesting by giving some other responsibilities as well, and the models that you already have make their life easier in some of those responsibilities.
Yeah, so it's like the rewards for like making data better. They get better models, and also they have a varied data sets to label because we have a lot of different problems we tackle. For example, some might be segmentation, detection, classification, or custom data sets where we have like custom tools. For example, finding where the floors there are like say floor split or something like that, where people are moving on the stairs.
So just last note on this. So what have you seen what is the skill set needed for these people, and where do you look for them, and so far how did you? So this because they already were working with the image stitching, right?
Yeah. So for the people who worked in production and they already did this, so it's just natural step because they can like don't map these images in production, or they can label them. But there's a bit difference because when we label data, we usually choose maybe harder problems, and we want them to be really high quality annotations. So like really attention to detail is important because.
How do you get attention to detail from people? Where do you find them?
Well, I think it's difficult in any place, but usually you improve this by having good reviewers who like you need to choose your reviewers who will like look through the data and like and give feedback and say like you have to rework this, and they know that like they're maybe if they do a good job it will be better, but I can't answer how you
Sure. I was just staying on this topic a little bit longer because I have seen similar situations in our company that the data labeling part is critical for the models, and there should be ways how to get the right people, how to motivate them, how to ensure that the quality exists, and so on. So, but then on the Giraffe 360 in general, so you have on July 3rd the announcement that you have a new great feature that automatically annotates the properties for the ad listings, right? Can you tell about more of that?
Yeah, so that's our first NLP feature.
You mean natural language processing?
Yeah, it's interesting that we haven't worked on anything. We only worked on visuals, and this one uses some for existing data. So it's we already know a lot about our properties like furniture, layouts, where it is the location. So we have to plug that into our descriptions. So this was our first feature that uses natural language processing, and there are some existing customers, like existing solutions that already do this, and it's a bit challenged because I don't work directly in this, but it's not really even like ML engineering; it's prompt engineering. You try to elicit certain responses, and you don't know exactly how it's going to behave every time.
You already had some funny examples so far?
Not funny. I haven't seen the funny ones, but in the presentations. But maybe you should ask. But it's more like the structure.
Okay.
Because you want, for example, a certain structure, and you feed it. For example, I want to describe property, for example, with 3 bedrooms, and then the question is how you get those adjectives and the length and the paragraphs. It's. I think we're just exploring this topic, and we'll see how the clients respond to this.
But so, and how did you decide on this particular feature? You know, like it already seems that you have so many AI directions on different problems, and when you add new features to the product, there probably should be some serious pain in the market. You know, like is it really the pain that real estate agents need to write down these descriptions, and they're selling like hundreds or thousands of properties every day, or why this?
I don't know actually why it was chosen specifically. I know that I heard that certain customers want this, and also like there are already services that charge customers for this. So because like people usually need descriptions on their property, so it's something that is required, and we filled this gap basically.
And so do you have knowledge like what is the plans for the future? You know, like what could we expect in the near term, long term future, and how much it's related to the AI and more to the hardware or other aspects?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer. Some of it is probably like I can't probably reveal everything, but for our AI team, it's probably improving the processing side so that we can scale processing without manual intervention. That's probably our #1 job, and that's the easy part because you always know that you have automation is like a primary target, but then there are features, and features are something that we occasionally try to work on. For example, nerfs, which was also in our video release that we experimented with it, and it's a lot more tricky to work with nerfs.
What is nerfs?
So basically, nerfs is a new technique, neural radiance fields. Basically, you can capture images of something, or like take a video and, for example, a certain object, for example, a camera, and then you can render it in 360. So basically, like it will create a mesh, textures, and you can like
from multiple pictures, right?
Yeah.
So, but that technology already exists, at least methods for some time already, right?
Yeah, the methods exist. There's a lot of examples, open sourced examples, but making this work reliably is difficult, and it's also for very time consuming. Like because for GPU, like because for each nerf you have to learn. So like it's training process for each of them, and it takes a lot of time. And if you have many projects, it's just a huge scaling issue.
Yeah, Edwards, thank you for sharing all of this useful information. And at the end of the episode, what would be some of the key points that you want to leave our listeners if they would like to implement some of these AI technologies in their businesses?
It's a difficult question because there are so many things. Like there are many nuances, but I think the first one is having a great problem to deal with. Like even like I and other researchers, they like problems that actually bring value. like to the company. So if you're doing something meaningful, it's more enjoyable to work on. So starting with something simple that brings immediate value to the company, it's one of the key things that you should do, because it will simplify everything. The second, of course, is like you have to take into account data labeling. What do you need? Most probably, unless it's one of the trivial problems of like finding people or something like that with publicly open data sets and models, you're probably going to work on a custom data set. And if it's not labeled, you're going to have to think about how you're going to label it, or use some unsupervised method where you basically don't have a labeler, but you have certain outputs and you're going to try to infer from the data. And it's not easy sometimes figuring out what's the best. So you need either a dedicated in-house team maybe to label this data, or some great researchers who can figure out novel ways to use existing, maybe if you have millions of data points, like they can figure out. But it's going to be a challenge, and people should not underestimate it. And the third, I think, is infrastructure, because it seems like a trivial thing to deploy something to production mostly, but for ML development, unless you're using some like big cloud provider, if you're doing it in-house, it's a lot more challenging, because there's not many mature tools. And you're gonna have to figure out a lot of the boilerplate yourself. And that's why I don't think it's a great fit if you don't have already a lot of in-house servers or data centers. It's better to just do it in the cloud, because all that infrastructure is just gonna take away from bringing those models to production sooner. And you need a lot of iterations, because you're not gonna do everything in iteration 1.0. You're gonna have to need multiple iterations. For example, my first tone mapping model, I thought it was great. And now when I compare it against like my most recent iteration, it just like completely like blows it out of the box. So, and this iterations helps a lot, because once you have better predictions, also your standards grow, and people who work on it, also their results will be better. And so it's like a self-reinforcing loop sometimes.
Yeah, Eduard, thank you for sharing this. So again, just to summarize, so you say interesting problem for researchers to work, otherwise they will go look for a job somewhere else. Then the data set, so the businesses should be aware that data and the labeling of data, preparing of data, that unfortunately still doesn't come for free. And then the infrastructure, how you serve all of this process. Thank you for joining the episode of AI Ranch. And if you would like to show us a little bit of gratitude, then press like and follow our content. And if you want to explore a little bit more of our research directions, you can also look at our website in links below. And see you in the next episode. Thank you.